Safe, perhaps a bit more than any other Firefly episode, has an identifiable theme running through it. Safe is talking about home. Home is where the heart is, as Simon soon learns. Simon's heart, however, in the beginning at least, resides nowhere. He treats everyone, including his sister, with a bit of contempt, and Safe does best when it teaches a lesson to this self-absorbed man. You might see some comparisons with Janestown, where Jane is also taught his very own personal lesson. Safe does a better job with the moral lesson bit, because Simon is just a more complex person, and we smart people can identify more with his internal struggle. Aside from the big theme, Safe is also a superb collection of telling scenes, exciting moments, and surprisingly moving characters. I stand in awe at the kooky simplicity of the folk dance scene, and I just could not help but feel almost ridiculously excited by the short, sweet, action-packed rescue scene. I imagine how Safe could have been a little more, actually, but I have better things to do than complain. Estate, and not home. Those two words do not necessarily mean the same thing. As Simon begins to discover in this episode, later he makes it clear that this is certainly not his home anymore.
Paradise. Good God, they're asking money for this crap?
Hard to believe, ain't it? Glad you're out. Give you a chance to have a little fun.
Fun? Right. Yeah, I consider this fun. It's fun, being forced to the ass end of the galaxy to get to live on a piece of Lasso wreck and eat molded protein.
And be bullied around by our Pian Jojo Cha Ren of a captain.
Kaylee reacts most strongly to the insult to her ship.
Lassa?
This is just like the popular scene in the popular Star Trek episode, The Trouble with Tribbles, when Scotty brushes over an insult to the captain but starts a fight over an insult to the Enterprise. I guess all spacefaring ship engineers think alike. This reprimand of Simon is perhaps a reprimand of many of us who would see things Simon's way. It's sort of a road rage, perhaps.
You're being mean, is what? And if that's what you think of this life, then you can't think much of them that choose it, can you?
He, as usual, lashes out against no one in particular when he's angry. Kaylee's cheerfulness seems to give this sometimes sadist a good place to vent, but he is expressing some class issues that seem to pervade the verse of Firefly, as well as any free and open capitalist society. This is what happens when snobby assholes are allowed to think of themselves as superior because they have more money, or a better position in a society that is usually based on merit. I'm ranting here because this theme comes up often in Firefly. The Marxist will shut up now. Here's another one of those moments that is supposed to be more realistic to the characters than practical to the plot.
Morning, officers.
Simon really has no idea how to remain inconspicuous, does he?
She is trying to tell us something that somebody doesn't want her to say.
Simon, this is paranoid. It's stress. If they heard you talking like this at the hospital, it could affect your entire future.
Who cares about my future?
You should.
You're a surgeon in one of the best hospitals in Capital City. On your way to a major position, possibly even the medical elect, you're going to throw all that away. Everything you've worked for your whole life.
Being a doctor means more to you than just the position. I know that.
This tidy underestimation speaks to one of the most intriguing aspects of Firefly, Simon's eagerness to play doctor. It may be easy to make fluffy statements like, Simon is more than just a doctor. But in reality, he is usually not. His life is so consumed by his professional commitments, demeanor, and lifestyle that he risks alienating his relationship with Kaylee and everyone else on board, including River. Remember the scene in Ariel when he briefly abandoned Jane and River to save a nearby patient's life? It is scenes like that that mark Simon's most important contribution to Firefly. Sure, his love interest with Kaylee is quite charming, but Simon is constantly confronted by dilemmas and scenarios that resonate with moral ambiguity or with a lot of great humor, but all of which orbit around his chosen profession. I am also remembering the time when he drugged Jane to shut him up, or when he refused to treat Kaylee out of fear for his sister, or when he gets a lecture from Jubal Early about getting shot just for the experience of it. The list goes on. And there is a strange medical scenario in just about every episode that adds to the whirlwind situations in which Simon finds himself involved. In this episode, look at the speed at which Simon picks up the responsibility of caring for the sick at the camp of kidnappers. Simon, like a good doctor character, is the engine of the moral lessons to be opened up for us.
I hear crickets. I don't understand. If Ruby didn't talk, how do you know?
This witchcraft accusation is one of the most peculiar plot twists in this entire TV series. At first glance, you can see the plot twist as just setting up the exciting action-oriented finale, when Malcolm tells us about the divine will of the guy with the big gun hanging from the spaceship, and this criticism is not too far off. I, for one, would have been more interested into seeing Simon struggle to determine if this Hickville is really his home. That's an important point in this episode. He is apparently at a critical point of indecision before now, but because of the settler's wacko fundamentalist streak, his decision is made a bit too easy, and so this plot twist cuts off an interesting deliberation faced by the snobby doctor. Instead of debating the subtle things and emotions that make up a true home, Simon is somewhat reduced to the yelling match that he has with the settlers about their ignorance, etc. Nonetheless, this plot thickening is quite cool and interesting. We get a touching moment when Simon decides where his home really is, and of course we get the exciting action-packed finale that I mentioned.
Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live.
She's quoting the Bible, and I suspect that this plot twist was written with the regular viewers in mind. Buffy the Vampire Slayer has a lot of pseudo-truths to say about witchcraft, and this may have been seen as an opportunity to present a bit of real truth about witchcraft's legacy and history. So in the end, I should admit that I think this part of the plot adds some value to the episode. Even though it is a bit too obvious, it is certainly exciting enough, and it gets the point across without lecturing.
She's just a troubled girl.
I'm sure that's true. You're not a witch, are you, young Jingda? I'm the patron here. Do you know what that means?
Yes. You're in charge. Ever since the old patron died.
That's right.
He was sick. And he was getting better. You were alone in the room with him.
This girl reads minds and spins falsehoods. She's a witch, and we must purge the devil from her with fire.
Have you completely lost your mind?
Pretty nearly.
We got the wave at the Friedlichs. I had to leave your mother at the dinner table.
I'm sorry, Dad.
This father character is one of the better depictions of a person acting in silent acceptance of a potentially oppressive regime.
Don't you dare be flippant with me. I just spent 2,000 credits to get you out of here, and I had to walk through that door which goes on my permanent profile. Are you trying to destroy this family?
We don't often see too much evidence of the widespread alliance oppression that Malcolm fears, but we certainly get our earful of stories of the abuses that, quote, regular people have the decorum to ignore. Of course, you can see in the father's eye shades of a citizen of Nazi Germany who will turn a blind eye to concentration camps for fear of hurting his career.
How far down you can go, and you're not taking us with you.
Meaning what?
I won't come for you again. You end up here, or get mixed up in something worse. You're on your own.
Surely he is no longer the father of Simon and River. Maybe Malcolm is now, huh? Perhaps that is also a theme in this episode.
Now, are you coming home?
So finally, a decent wound on this ship, and I miss out. I'm sorry.
Well, you were busy trying to get yourself lit on fire.
I'm sorry to interrupt this touching moment, but I have to comment about Malcolm in one of his finest hours.
Why did you come back for us?
You're on my crew.
Yeah, but you don't even like me. Why'd you come back?
You're on my crew.
I don't think he is being facetious. That's really his bottom line. And this character,
Chow's in 10. No need to dress.
is a great role model for Simon and River, and those among us who don't yet have all our morals intact. I think I'm going to let my 7-year-old son watch Firefly as early as I feel he can handle the violence. Okay, now I know you probably didn't miss this, but an eye to detail is the mark of a great TV show. Notice that he pushes in her chair. This is probably a sign of that civilization that Simon was yearning for earlier in the episode. Obviously, he simply intends this as the part of an apology for his rudeness earlier, but this detail is packed with meaning. In addition, I should mention this as another fun and interesting apology that comes out of Firefly drama. The best apology is, of course, in Shindig, when Malcolm buys Kaylee a fancy dress. This dinner scene is not the most eventful or entertaining ending to a Firefly episode, but it does suit an important purpose for the series. Earlier in the episode, the young nurse argues that her way of life has merit because people care for each other. I think that this is actually an important running theme in Firefly. We also hear a bit about this theme in Our Mrs. Reynolds, but of course the nurse was speaking out of ignorance and in defense of a pathetic lifestyle. This dinner scene is probably meant to say, see, people can commune and care for each other without being ignorant, desperate, and genocidal. You do not need to be outcast to find happiness. Most people not living on Serenity, however, seem to become corrupt if they don't separate from what is safe and really discover where to them is home.